Rappers and music producers, it's Curtis King and CurtisKingBeats.com, and today begins a new series in which I show you different styles and different ways that you can design your own album covers and your own single art. Super easy to follow, all within Photoshop. Rappers and music producers, many of you know that for years and years, I have made my own album covers and my own single art. Now, there have been times that I've been blessed to work with some graphic designers that are super duper talented, but their schedules can be super busy and their process is a lot more tedious because they're actual graphic designers. However, for myself, never really saw myself as a graphic designer. I just knew what looked good and what didn't look good. And there's a lot of rap albums and a lot of single arts that just don't look good. Sometimes it's either text that looks bad, or sometimes it's the images pixelated, whatever the case may be. Hopefully by showing you examples of folks that have some pretty clean cover arts, some memorable cover arts, if we break it down into different steps, maybe I can show you certain ways that you can do it for yourself. So today we're gonna do a pretty simple one to start this series off, and it's basically going to be duplicating this particular artwork that I saw on a blog post. It is for an artist named The Ruler, and basically if you look at it right now, there's a few different elements that you're gonna make sure you need. One being your logo, another being the parental advisory sticker, and the next thing having like a real funky font to mess around with. And in the background, there's these grunge brushes that I'm gonna show you how to get your own and how to make something just like this. Now, what I am working on is Photoshop CC, which is the most recent one.
It's the legal one.
You can do this on pretty much any version of Photoshop if you just follow these steps. Either way, I'm talking a lot. Let's get straight to the point. So the first thing you wanna do is go to File and New. Once you're in here, you're gonna determine the size that you want. Now, typically, when you're talking about artwork for like Apple Music, they want 3000 by 3000. Usually every other website is pretty cool with 1000 by 1000 because it's high resolution, and even though they shrink it down, it just looks so clean even as a thumbnail. So in this example, let's do 1000 by 1000. Typically, graphic designers tell me you want to keep your pixel resolution, which is this next section down here, from at least 200 to 300. 300 if you're trying to print this out eventually, like give out flyers, but 200 should be good for right now. So go ahead and create. Now, once we have that, you're gonna see that it's only one layer. If you never worked on Photoshop before, all you gotta understand is that Photoshop works in layers. So if I add another image on top of this, it's like no different from when you're working with the photo grid on your phone app and you're trying to put like text, that's another layer. You're trying to put a sticker, that's another layer. Same thing as Insta Stories. So first things first, let's open up the example template that we're going to be actually basing this tutorial off of. Now that we have that open, we can go ahead and drag this out just so we have a side-by-side analysis. Okay. So when I'm typically working on some artwork and I have some inspiration such as this particular cover, the first thing I need to do is change the primary color, this color in the background. Now over here, you're gonna have all the tools that you're gonna use, from your text to your coloring to your brushes and all that good stuff. First thing you wanna do is go over here to the paint bucket. Now, if you don't see it here, what you wanna do is right click, and it might be on gradient tool, but if it's not, just go down here to the paint bucket tool, boom. Next thing, here's where you determine your colors for this particular paint bucket. The paint bucket basically will just change the entire color of this particular layer, which is the background layer. So we wanna change this to this kind of magenta color. How do we do that? Click here on this top color layer and then sample it. You see this little drop right here? You wanna sample it from this artwork. Make sure it looks accurate, because sometimes it'll take darker versions of that color. Once it's accurate, push OK. Then go to the paint bucket tool. And now it's the same color. Cool, we got that established. Now the next thing I want to establish, I want to go ahead and add probably the text next. So go down here to the text tool. Try to go as close to the center as you can. And then click on here. Now the first thing I would probably do is change the font color. The way you do that is you go up here. You don't use that. You go up here to the actual text properties, go down here to the black, push OK. Now right now, if we start typing, that looks super small. We want that to be bigger. So we can either change it right here, or we could change it manually after the fact. I like to change it up there. It's pretty easy to do that. So let's just say that the song is called Look Alive. We'll just go ahead and just kind of copy that. Now, obviously, we didn't have it completely centered. One of the great things about using Photoshop CC, it allows you to see sort of where the guidelines are. Same thing with InstaStory. InstaStory shows you when your image is centered and your text is centered. Same thing here, which is super convenient in this particular example. So we know that that is centered. Now, once that is centered, click back on the text tool, double click over this, and let's change the font, because right now that font looks a little bit too proper for this particular example. So when you click here on the drop down menu, you're gonna see a few different options for fonts that may work for this. I sometimes go through here and manually look at the fonts, but then I like to just kind of sit there and just go around with it. I think this is pretty similar to this one. So you got this one that is Big Fish Ensemble. If you double click that, we can make it as thick as this one is. All you gotta do is right click over here and then go to bold. Now, as you're seeing this, you're seeing that it's adding another layer. Yes, like I said, Photoshop works in layers, so it's good to pay attention to that. So now that we have that particular layer, what we need is another layer down here for the part where it says remix. Okay, so we're gonna click down here and we're gonna put in remix. Now, obviously that one over there is a lot smaller. So once we establish that, click here to the move tool and just kind of move it where you think it might go, okay? Once you have it here, an easier way to resize it instead of going back through the font size, make sure you're on this layer and push Control T. Now, once you do that, you're able to resize the actual font, but don't go resizing it just like this, because what's gonna happen is it's gonna be different resolution, different sizes, it's not gonna look good. So we're gonna go ahead and do that and push Control Z. So then once again, if you wanna resize it, you're gonna do the transformation tool, which is Control T. So once you actually push Control T to get it back to transform, what you wanna do, you wanna hold down the Shift key to make sure that it's all within the same aspect ratio. Hold down the Shift key, and then just drag it in until you got the size that you're happy with. Also too, let's do a little rotation. You don't have to hold down Shift for this one. So then usually you could double click and get that, but we're not gonna do that. We're gonna go ahead and go to the move tool, apply, and then just kind of put it where it's at right there. So from there, what we need to add now is our logo, the parental advisory sticker, and then we're gonna do this grunge background in a second as well. So to add our logo and the parental advisory sticker, you wanna go to File, Open, get the parental advisory sticker, and then also get your logo. Okay, so as you can see, they put the logo right here pretty strategically down here by the parental advisory sticker. Now my logo is pretty big right here, so I'm going to change it because once again, I want to make sure it's high resolution still. I want to change that down to about, I'd say about, let's say 300. So that's going to resize it. Once it's resized, I can use the move tool. So it should be already on there and just drag it over here. Okay, now obviously that is way too big in comparison to this right here. So to change the size of that, I push Control T, hold down Shift, and then drag it to where it's about the same size relatively to that particular example that we're using for the the ruler one. I want to make sure that it's centered. Okay. Now, once we have that, what we want to do is add this same little sort of white outline here, and we're going to use the stroke tool. Here's where it's going to be important to make sure that you understand how Photoshop works in layers. Now, like I said, this is another layer. We should probably rename this layer to logo just to keep track of it. So once you see that particular layer, what you want to do, double click on that. It's going to take you to the layer style, where this is where you're going to put your outline that we show within this particular the ruler logo. We're going to do the same thing for our logo. So you want to go over here, go to stroke, click on the stroke option. And then from here, we're going to make it a white background. It's already white background, which is good. And then we're going to change the amount of the actual outline. Now it looks pretty similar. It might be even less of the outline. I feel like this should be pretty straight. Cool. Once I have that, you push OK. So now our logo is sitting right here. Now we need the parental advisory sticker. Okay, now that we have the parental advisory sticker back open, we're gonna resize this to about the same size as the logo. So we're gonna say about 300 in case we need to resize it. Once we have that, we click here. And obviously that's super huge. So what we need to do is push Control T. Once again, pay attention to the layers over here. And then hold down Shift and just resize it. Then we move it over. Now, something else that's worth noting is that they do a pretty good job of making sure that this particular advisory logo is pretty much parallel to this particular logo. So you want to make sure you do the same thing here, just so it looks good as you're talking about the size of everything. So we have that. Now the next thing we got to do, as I'm looking at this, I'm getting a bit OCD, so I want to kind of move both of these layers. So the parental advisory and the logo layer, I want to kind of move that over to the center. Boom. Now I'm feeling better about that. So the next thing we need to do is we need to edit this background. Before we go to the actual brush tool that we're going to edit this on, we got to make sure we're on the right layer. In case you make an error, it's important that you probably go down here to the background, which is the bottom layer, which is this color. Right click it, duplicate the layer. And now we're messing around with another background that doesn't affect the primary background because this one's on top of this one, right? So if I take both of these away, we have no background. But that one and that one, now it's two layers on top of each other. Hope that makes sense. So once we have that, the next thing we got to do is add sort of a grunge effect like you see back here. If you can't tell, this is sort of like a Photoshop brush preset that they have. And the way that we access that, first of all, you're gonna have to download probably some free brushes that you can get from like brusheasy.com. That's where I got these brushes that I'm about to use right now. And you just experiment with it, and if you don't like it, push Control Z. So first things first, we got the brush tool here. Okay. Once we get the brush tool open, we're gonna go over here to the actual image and right click. Now I already loaded the brushes in here, and the way you do that is basically go here to that tools wrench and then go up to preset manager and then just load the brushes wherever you downloaded them from. Super easy. But because we already loaded this up, now we can kind of pretty much test out what this is going to look like. So this one says subtle grunge brushes. Let me see. I want to kind of mess around with one of these. That might be interesting. We got to change the size of this one though. The way you change the size of the brush is pretty much go down here, up and down on the size. Boom. We want to get this pretty much the size of this photo. So you got to do some experimentation, which is fine. Now, before we actually lay any kind of color down, let's make sure we got the right color. So go back here to the foreground color. Go to black, because obviously these marks back here are black. And let's just experiment with it. Push on it. Oh, that looks pretty crazy. Okay. Now, we want to change a bit of the opacity because it's not as dark as this. See how this dominates the whole thing? So let's change the opacity to about 36. Look at that. Now it's not exactly like that, but it's still pretty dope to put out as a single art. And mind you, it's not gonna look perfect the first time around. You'll do some experimentation after the fact to make it look as good as you want it to look. But keep in mind, it's just a work in progress. So that's not the particular style of that one. So let's try another one. That's closer, but let's go ahead and take the opacity back up. Look at that. I'm not even gonna lie, I kind of like ours a little bit better now, but that's just me. So what you'll basically do, you'll go experiment through different brushes and see what you like. As I'm looking at this now, the one thing that stands out to me from looking at this is that there's a few things that I don't like now about the original after we've copied them. One of which being the outline around the logo. I think now I would take the outline off, the stroke, and you could do that easily by going here and clicking on this eyeball tool, and it takes it off of there. I think that looks a lot better. I might even change the color of it to a white. Let's go ahead and try that. So we're on the logo, double click it, and what you want to do is go to color overlay. That even looks pretty dope. And then go to white. Boom. So now we have that there. We can even add, like, say you want to add your name. I probably would make it just a little bit smaller. Just to kind of give it some balance. But you're gonna be messing around with this thing until you find something that you really like about it. Now, I like this. I'm not in love with it, but I wanted to just kind of show you a way to get started so that you can start experimenting with this. What I'd probably do from here, I would probably experiment more with these colors, not the black. I probably would use white instead. Yeah, that pops out a lot more. I would take my name, do the same thing. I would take this remix right here, probably change the color to like an off color. Then I probably would go back here to the color of the logo, and I think I would sample this color. But basically, I mean, this is all that this is. A lot of the artwork that you're seeing, you don't necessarily have to go and hurry up and hire somebody. You just gotta make sure that you know exactly what it is that they're doing and how you can utilize it for your own liking. So boom, there it is. So that's only one particular style that I'm gonna show you in this series. The more we get into it, the more you'll realize that there's not just one way to do any of these things. There's different types of ways. It's up to your creativity, how you wanna go about it. I enjoy doing this. I can do this stuff all night. So we'll do more as the days come on. If you guys have any suggestions of album covers, and keep it reasonable. I don't know how to do some of these crazy graphic arts, but some stuff that's very simple like this, it's easy to get it done. Once again, this is Curtis King, CurtisKingBeats.com. Have a good one. Please subscribe to the channel below, Curtis King, CurtisKingBeats.com.